Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'm super excited about today's guest. Her name is Felicia Tomasko. She's the editor-in-chief of LA Yoga Magazine, so you may know her work better than you know her, and so this is a great opportunity to get to know her a little bit better, get to know her process and her practice a little bit more, and how she cultivates mental wellness. We're continuing with the Mental Health Awareness series, and of course the theme is cultivating mental wellness. So I'm so happy that we have a live audience, that you guys are here. And hey Kirsten, hey Ansley, hey Ashley and Kelly and Brooke and Jade and everyone. Hey Donovan. Thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions for me or for Felicia throughout the process here, we'll answer them. We'll totally engage and stay connected. But I'm really excited for her to pop on and join any minute now. So how are you guys? In the meantime, let me know where you're coming from. Hey, Crystal. Let me know where you guys are coming from. I know that Crystal's in Montana. Donovan is in Los Angeles. And here's Felicia, so she'll be coming on right now momentarily. So thank you guys for being here. Hey, Ansley. Hey, Josh. Michael. Kirsten, hey. Felicia, what's up?
Hey Ben, how are you? Great to be in the virtual space with you.
Yeah, it's so nice to just come together and hang out with you like this. So good to
Absolutely.
see you.
So good to see you too.
Yeah, okay, so I was just telling everyone a little bit about you. I was just gushing a little bit. You're the editor-in-chief of LA Yoga Magazine. And you do so much for the space. You are front and center. You're an instructor at Yoga Glow. So you do have online classes that you teach. There's a lot of great videos of content that you've created. But really you're a curator of content, and you bring together like huge communities and masses of information together. So really, really cool gifts. So welcome. Thanks for coming. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month.
Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you so much for hosting this. It's such an important conversation no matter what's happening in the world that we live in, but especially right now, it is so, so important. And I think that with so much news out there that it's hard to sift through, and it's hard to sift through what we need to listen to, it becomes even more important for us to meditate, for us to find those practices that do take care of our mental health in times that really try our resilience.
Oh yeah, and resilience is the word. That's a great word choice right there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
really, and you know, I had a thought today. This is all going to be quote unquote over before we know it. You know, and those of us who have a present moment awareness practice, I think now's the time to put it to activate it. You know, and really
Right.
be present with this time and what we can do with it. But I want to just share with everyone a little bit about you, about your magazine, and about sort of what your personal reality looks like for cultivating mental wellness, and however much you want to share or don't share about what your health journey has been like. So, and specifically how you've stayed mentally well throughout the process of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so should I just start talking? Well, you mentioned just with my health journey. So I'm really fortunate and I feel privileged to be able to be at home right now during our current pandemic, and I haven't had any COVID-19 symptoms, and I feel really just very privileged in that way, and especially because last year, so in 2019, I was going through treatment for early stage breast cancer, and I had multiple surgeries and radiation, and that was an extremely challenging experience to go through. And I know that many people face some sort of cancer in their lifetime, and some people live to see the other side, and some people it's their exit, it's the end. So again, I feel fortunate that I'm still here to talk about it for sure. And I'm also in a position right now where I'm done with doctor's appointments, you know, at least for the foreseeable future. But that experience really has made me think a lot about resilience, and you know what you were just mentioning, and in even in terms of the discussions around mental health. we don't have to have a mental health diagnosis to be concerned with our mental health, that it really is about mental wellness. It really is about how we as a community of people, of humans, support each other. How do we look out for each other's mental health? How do we deal with the fact that as human beings, we're going to experience things that break our hearts. We're going to experience things that make us question our faith. We're going to experience things that challenge us. And throughout that, we need to keep coming back to the practices that help us with that resilience, whether it is COVID-19 or cancer diagnosis or anything else.
Yeah, so beautiful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what that looks like for you. You know, I love seeing what you curate, and I love you have such a humility about you, especially in relationship to the magazine, because you don't put yourself all over it. We don't see Felicia's face here and there and everywhere, but I know from personal experience, ladies and gentlemen, she is so hands-on with this book.
Mm-hmm.
You do so much. You do so much of the curating of the content personally, and I think that you have a real gift for sharing other people's voices. In addition to your personal voice, you have a definite message. You know that you share every time you open your mouth. It's edifying and helpful. You know.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And it is something that is important to me to share other people's voices because we are in a community together. And there are as many different kinds of practices for resilience as there are people. And we relate to each other and we relate to each other's stories and we relate to each other's inspiration. And part of the guiding principles that I've held for a really long time at LA Yoga Magazine in terms of curating content are these, telling stories that do uplift us, offering things that are inspirational because we do become inspired by each other, by our own challenges and hardships and triumphs and everything else, right? Those are the stories we love to hear. We want to learn from other people and we want to be uplifted by and uplift other people. And then the third thing is really offering positive solutions, meaningful solutions. And it's one of the reasons why I love the work that you do is because you offer sets of solutions. It's one of the reasons why I really look for people in the community that are offering solutions, right? There's so many things that are already out there in the world that are gossipy or about the ways that we tear each other apart. But what about the ways that we put each other back together?
Yes. Oh, wow. I love how you said that. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's so relatable too.
Mm-hmm.
We see people tear each other apart, and in fact, we see it so much, and it becomes part of our worldview, and we participate in it unconsciously. We
Right.
gossip,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's actually not normal and not good. That's not healthy mentally to be in that state of gossiping. So I always call it the psychic diet. What are you taking
Right.
in? What's your psyche taking in? You know, and I would say the content that you generate would be really good nutritionally, psychically, really good psychic nutrition.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because we do need to nourish each other psychologically, psychically, spiritually with our conversation, right? What's the quality of our conversations? Are is our fellowship and our community full of superfoods or, are we, eating the stuff from the back and the bottom of the bag and the stuff that's stale,
Yeah,
right? Are we having conversations and connections with people that are stale or that are nourishing. And so
right.
I love the way you talk about that. I think it's so important because, according to the principles of Ayurveda, which is science that's very close to my heart, um, we're always taking things in, and we're not just eating our food, right? It's not just our food that nourishes us. And just like you so beautifully said, we're nourished by people, we're nourished by ideas, we're nourished by stories, we're nourished by music, and even thinking about our own mental health, right? What's all of it that we create around us and surround ourselves with, and how do we surround ourselves with as many things as possible that uplift us, because we know that just by default there's a lot out there that's not focused on uplifting us. That's just what it is. That's already there. We don't have to seek it.
Right.
right?
Right. And it's
So
sort of
we do
what,
have to seek out, everything else.
yes, what I'm seeing is like this parallel, like I like this nutrition thing we went on,
Yeah,
because it's like from a neuroscience perspective, like in neurobiology, you eat something like sugar, for example, refined sugar gives you like this drug boost in your brain and you
right,
get this pleasure hit like immediately. It's not just that it's sweet, it's that
right,
it sends a flood of like dope to the brain. And
right,
so that's the thing with some healthier eating sometimes takes a little bit longer. The
right.
higher quality food takes a little bit longer. It just does. And I think that that's what's interesting with the media content that we take in. A lot of times, I mentioned yesterday on a podcast about porn, how there's
Mm,
there's like, of course, explicit pornography, but then there's also like gossip porn, you know, where it's sort of like the tabloid culture,
right,
that literally has a similar effect on the brain biologically that fast food does. Where it sends it sends an emotion, sends an emotional pleasure center hit, and it floods with intrigue. We get intrigued,
right.
and it's like clickbait, and it's seductive headlines and super sexual imagery, or super attractive or seducing imagery one way or another, even if it's not sexual. And so what I find is like with content like LA Yoga Magazine and with reading more meaningful, nourishing content, it sometimes takes a little bit longer. It sometimes you have to. My little brother Jeffrey, he's the vice president of Lecanto,
Hmm.
uh, and and I sent him the manuscript to my new book, Meditations on Christ, which I would love to send you a copy of it. Um, and he read one sentence of it, and he texted it to me, and he said, "This is a lot in one sentence. I had to really ponder on it." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, that's the point. It's meditations. And he said, "Yeah, but your subtitle says 5-minute guided journal for Christians. It should be 5 minute per sentence."
Well, there is a whole thing of slow food and slow eating and everything else, right? That if we do take our time, that there's something really special about that. There's something that is really nourishing, right? Because sometimes it's like when you eat something really quickly, you don't even know you've eaten it, right? Like if you consume a bunch of things really quickly, but if you have the chance to ponder it, then you actually take it in, then you actually digest it, then it actually feeds your soul, right? So think about those 5 minutes of really, really speaking to the soul on a deep level. And how does that serve our mental health? Right? That taking the time, that really observing, noticing, feeling. In a way, we're slowing time down,
Yeah. And so I want
right?
to know about like what your personal practice is like. I know you share a lot of different practices. There's no way that you're doing all of it every day, right?
No, but I practice every day. And I think that's the thing too. And sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in the trap of, well, if I can't do a 90-minute, perfect yoga practice with all the things, then I'm not really practicing, right? The important thing is just to practice every day. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 3 minutes, it could be those 5 minutes reading that one sentence. That's practice. But I also think practice has to be intentional, that we have the intention that this is our practice, not just, with more intention than say, flicking the remote control, right? Like, oh, there's my practice. But to really be in a place of practice very intentionally, even if it is for 5 minutes. So part of my non-negotiable with myself, and I think that's a helpful thing to think of too, in terms of our own resilience and resistance and everything, is to have something that's non-negotiable. So my non-negotiable is that I practice, and
Yeah,
that
I love
practice
that.
can take different forms.
Yeah.
But that
See,
there is a practice, and that practice, really nothing substitutes for meditation, right? And also we are embodied human beings, so we need to do something that moves our body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? If we're
Yeah,
just like, yeah, it's not enough to just sit too.
yeah,
It's, you
there's
have
different
to sitting and
layers.
moving. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, layers to who we are and what we
Yeah.
are. You're getting a lot of love. Donald and Zoe and Kelly and Reba are all just like totally loving what you're saying.
Oh.
So just wanted to give that shout out. So thank you for all of that. It's really, really good. And I'm loving that. I'm loving what you just said. It's a you have a non-negotiable. So ladies and gentlemen, right there, that's a good thing to just tune into. What is your non-negotiable? So
Mm-hmm.
as far as cultivating mental wellness, starting to think, and you're exactly right. There's just as many different people there in the world. There are different practices.
Right. Right. And again, we don't have to ascribe to here's the perfect practice, or this is the one practice, or this is the practice for everyone, right? There are practices for everyone, but there's no one practice for everyone.
Yeah.
So, right, we don't have to
There
fall
are
into that.
practices for everyone, but there's no one practice for everyone. Okay.
Yeah,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a
there we go.
tweetable right there.
And I just made it up, so hopefully it sounds good, but it's true, right? There's no one practice. We don't have to like go to every mountaintop and find the one magic practice, just like with food, right? We need a variety of foods, right? And different foods work for different people. Different practices work for different people.
Mhm.
You know,
And different
yeah,
times.
yeah,
At
right.
different
Some people
times.
at different times, right? Then that can be just even times of the day or just as we go through our lives, right? And maybe, one of the things I really am noticing right now is just with all the, stay at home and everything else, I'm making sure that I'm walking more. That I
Mm,
found just the act of walking, like I'll walk to pick something up or I'll walk to do something, because walking just creates that movement. I turn that into a meditation or a yoga practice as well.
yeah, and that's really good, and it's really good neurologically.
Hmm.
The left right stepping. It has that simulation through the left and right sides of the brain and the body, and
Right.
and it gets the mind going. Do you find that what do you find your mind
Well, I
doing?
do find I get creative, definitely. There's a creativity that happens. It almost is like clearing out stuff that's stuck, clearing out cobwebs, clearing out anything that feels stagnant. And just also so definitely the mental clearing and the physicality of it, right? And just feeling a little bit better, feeling less stagnant. And when we think about mental health, right, when we're really in spaces that are, not good mentally, then we're stagnant, right? So keep moving, right? And like Donna said, being kind is her non-negotiable. If
Yeah.
you can do nothing, smile. Because if you think about even the neurobiology of smiling, right? It actually, it's a whole muscular activity that changes our chemistry. Walking, yoga, movement changes our biochemistry.
Hmm. I remember one article from your magazine. I remember if you wrote it, or I always picture you. Anytime I'm reading the magazine, I'm like picturing Felicia reading to me, or talking to me, and
Oh, I love that.
yeah, I spent a lot of time with you, like telepathically. Um, but I remember there was one article that I seem to think that you wrote, but maybe not. Um, Definitely in your magazine about morning rituals, Ayurvedic morning rituals, and the
Mm-hmm,
two.
mm-hmm.
There was one that was like when you. This is kind of funny, but when you're on the toilet, just be on the toilet. Don't be on your phone
Right,
and on the toilet.
right,
You know.
right, right.
Um, and it's kind of like little things like that add up to something bigger. Another thing that I actually started to implement, and I implement it sort of like in spurts. I can't say that I'm perfect about it every day, but I will say that I have had seasons of very consistent dry brushing.
Oh, I love dry brushing. Dry
Yes, so
brushing is one of
you
my
gave that to
favorite.
me. You gave
Oh,
that to me.
good.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah, I
yeah,
hope I give it to lots of people. That's one of my favorites
yeah.
because, and dry brushing, you just use a dry natural bristle brush and just like it sounds, it's dry brushing. And you can take and do your arms and your in your body and not everyone loves it. It can be a little rough for some people. You can also do it with a washcloth and it's a really good gentle self massage. It's good for increasing lymphatic circulation, lymphatic drainage. Symbolically, I also love it in terms of like creating a stronger boundary around yourself, right? Like that boundary of, this is me, this is not
Sovereignty.
me.
Yeah.
Sovereignty, that's such a great word, because those are things that come up for mental health too, right? Is allowing, everybody else's stuff to kind of get stuck to you, and to create that boundary and to let go. Like one of the things I'll think about sometimes when doing dry brushing is letting go of everything that's not me.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh. That's good. And that's good in two ways that I see right now. It's like, hey, Shannon, thanks for joining us. I see that in
Mm-hmm.
two ways. It's like letting go of everything that's not me, because we do take on other people's things,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to say like that there's that's only unhealthy. There's a healthy way to like be there for
Absolutely.
people.
Right. Like
Uh,
positive peer pressure or community, or
yeah.
picking up positive, like we can pick up positive habits from each other too. So,
Definitely, definitely.
mm-hmm.
And then there's another component to it where it's like things that I'm doing and things that I go into my life and behave. My own behaviors are not me. Like
Right,
I
right,
want to
right,
brush those off. I want to brush off
right,
my own character defects and
right.
become a better version of
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Yeah, what a beautiful way to look at it too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and it actually is for me as an energy work enthusiast. I am a practitioner and I am quote unquote a Reiki master or whatever, but I think master is like such an intense word to use for, but I am an energy work enthusiast. And
Right.
I do love the sort of like the energetic experience that happens when you're dry brushing,
Mm-hmm.
you, and there is something psychological about like really loving your body, taking
Yes.
good care of your body, and in that same article that had the toilet thing, like when you're on the toilet, just be on the toilet, uh, and when you're and dry brushing, there was the sesame oil pulling in the mouth, and then also
Uh-huh.
a physical massage
Right.
before the shower.
Right. Well, and I think that, all of these things are practices of self-care and self-love and self-appreciation, right? And I think that, we talk about, a lot of people talk about gratitude. I know this is something you've talked about in terms of mental health, in terms of wellness, but what about self-appreciation, gratitude for ourselves? Because if we look at it, right, actually having a human life is a gift. So to
Yeah.
appreciate, to really remember to appreciate, and in Ayurveda, many of the self-care practices, like you mentioned, like dry brushing, like oil massage, all of these are really about self-care and self-appreciation. And they also have been shown, and there's also scientific research that shows that these practices are good for our mental health. They have
Mhm.
positive effects on the neurobiology of our emotional state.
Yeah, definitely. And
Mm-hmm.
our friend here is saying self-care is sending a love letter to your body.
Oh, I
To
love that, Zoe. That's so
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's good. And I think I'm really into, I've got a couple books coming out, so I'm like
Hmm.
really in research mode. You know,
Yes.
you got to get it right. And so I'm really in the neuroscience. I'm down the neuroscience rabbit hole, and like the science of habits
Right.
and things like that. And there's something very interesting about self appreciation because of our mirror neurons.
Right.
When we look at someone else and they smile, we're that much more
Right.
likely to smile.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a wonderful smile, by the way. I love seeing you smile. But yeah, whenever we see someone smile, we're that much more likely to smile. When we smile at
Mm-hmm.
someone else, they're that much more likely to smile. And so I see self appreciation, it doesn't stop there, because an unbalanced amount of self appreciation, of course, becomes like megalomaniacal, like
Right.
arrogance. But the thing is, it in a healthy way, it creates this field that you can then take with you in your relationships, and then you
Right.
begin to see gratitude. You begin to experience that same kind of appreciation for the one you're with.
And that's so true, right? There's that sense of the way it's circular, the reciprocal appreciation, just like with mirror neurons and mirroring that and reflecting that. And that goes back into the sense of the positive things that we receive from each other, in community in any form or fashion, is that And that's really about uplifting. How do we even uplift each other, from our own presence?
Right. And so that's something that you've mentioned a couple times that I want to go to. Um, I want to ask a personal question.
Hmm.
When you were going through your cancer treatment, I hope this isn't too personal, like
No, no,
live,
go for it.
unfiltered. Okay. When you were going through that, how did you feel about the community response? Did you feel like that benefited you in your experience? Did you feel held by the community?
I did. And there were times that I spoke more publicly than others. So there were times in different parts of what I was going through last year where very few people knew, or times when more people knew, and times when I limited how many people were around, and times when I wanted more people around, just in terms of that circulation of energy. But at all times, I felt like there was such a benefit from, feeling held by community. And that took many forms. Like I felt really fortunate in the physicians and the doctors and the healthcare team that I worked with. I felt like there was, a positive relationship, and I felt seen and heard throughout that process. And I think that that's not to be underestimated, right? And that's something that sometimes we need to make sure that we choose those people who can cultivate that, right? And I was very aware, and I'm also trained as a nurse, right? So I'm very aware that we do choose our healthcare providers, and we can have the opportunity to interview them and to decide if those are going to be people that um, are a positive influence, and have a positive aspect of holding space as well as doing the necessary work. And then my friends and family and everyone else, I felt supported by and held by and contained by. So I feel like that is also an important part of our healing as well as our mental health in so many different kinds of situations and circumstances. And it's why, in there's so many different kinds of situations where there's support groups, right? Because there is the opportunity to seek out positive peer mental health support on so many levels.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that that token that you said about like when we were talking about creating sovereignty and
Hmm.
boundaries for ourselves, not taking on like the emotional baggage of other people, but also the reality that we can receive good things, we can get
Right.
good, you know, good energy from other people, and surrounding ourselves in that way. And I love what you said about how we can choose our physicians. I think that there's a couple things that are coming up. Like when it comes to the medical industry, I think a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience in that industry, it doesn't always feel like you can choose your physicians, especially when it comes to insurance. Like there are approved providers and not approved providers. It's nice in yoga because you can kind of just like go with who you like. So that's
Hmm.
nice. But that's actually an interesting thing, like with the active cultivation of wellness. It actually doesn't prevent you or make you immune necessarily to more serious challenges. You're a perfect example of someone who's cultivated wellness in a lot of ways, but still had to navigate your experience with cancer through traditional means, through traditional mainstream medical means.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a couple things within that, right? And I do want to encourage people, whether you're talking about, a medical provider in any field, right? Whether it's mental health, physical health, or really a combination, right? Because our mental and physical health are interconnected. So even within preferred providers, HMOs, or different kinds of systems, you can still make choices within that and make sure that, your healthcare providers are on the same team that you're on. And that is an important part of how we also advocate for ourselves, right? How we advocate for ourselves, or how we look at other members of our community to help be advocates for us or with us, or how we can advocate with others, right? That's something that, again, in terms of mental health, we can all remember. And, and you mentioned something too, and I've given this a lot of thought, is I have done yoga practice and meditation and following the principles of healthy eating and Ayurveda and all these things for a very long time. And it didn't give me the hall pass, right? I didn't get the thing that said, okay, you can skip, any of the serious diseases that are just kind of part of the crapshoot of being human, right? So I do feel like um, I I found something that was concerning, and I went to, I sought out, a diagnosis and medical attention and everything else. So in some ways, as one of my mentors said to me, your body presented something to you. One of the things that we think about even in terms of yoga is, what does it really mean to listen to the body? So when we think about our physical health, our mental health, our complete health, our community health, it's important for us to really look at, what does it mean to listen to the body, and then to take the body's advice, and to know that, this human body, even if you do all the, the right things, or the things on the list, right? Or is that, we might still feel anxious, we might still feel depressed, we might still have a serious diagnosis, things can happen to us. And to know that that's just kind of part of living in this human body, and not to let it discourage you, but to stay encouraged, and to stay in this place of finding the supportive community, taking in things that are nurturing and nourishing, having those non-negotiable practices that aren't necessarily going to solve your problems, right? But will give you the strength to be able to then take whatever action is necessary. Because if we're really going to be holistic, we're going to say that everything is fair game. So then how do we use discernment? How do we take the action that's necessary? And how are we doing that with clarity of mind and heart and spirit?
Wow, you are I feel like I could talk to you for another 5 hours about all of this. Where can we take any classes with you personally? I definitely want to recommend that people check out your magazine, LA Yoga Magazine. But
Mm-hmm.
where can we hear more from you personally?
Yeah, so LA Yoga Magazine obviously is a place where I've been, organizing content and everything else for a very long time. I do teach. I have a whole archive of online classes on a site called Glow, and I have meditation and yoga and a bunch of different practices. I teach in the yoga studies department at Loyola Marymount University for the classes that are open to the public. I do a lot of teaching. I feel really passionate about teaching and leading and meditation, and just also sharing these practices. And I love always reading your work, Ben, and just am continually inspired to continue my own meditation practice with all of the work that you do as well.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, we're just here together. We're just here
We are
together.
just
That
here
means so much
together.
to me that you said that. And thank you so much for your time today, because you really, really articulated some great information, and you have such sweet energy, and you're such a sweet spirit. And I'm so happy to be able to introduce you to my friends and to my community, even though our communities overlap quite a bit.
Hmm.
I think that you shared some really great stuff about community itself, and
Hmm.
also about the one takeaway that I think I really, really want to run with is having some kind of practice, having a non-negotiable,
Hmm. Hmm.
really looking at what that looks like for a practice. And what I see is holding ourselves to some kind of standard, holding ourselves to some kind of
Right.
standard, you know, and say, like, let's do this, let's try, let's actually, we don't need to be hard on ourselves, but to, not be too soft either.
Right, right, because your non-negotiable doesn't have to take up the whole day, right? And it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm going to do a one-fingered handstand for an hour, right? Your non-negotiable can be simple. And mine does rotate. Sometimes it's dry brushing, sometimes it's something, a very strong physical practice. Sometimes it's walking, sometimes it's meditation. And I do try to meditate pretty much every day,
Yeah,
aside from everything else. But yeah,
yeah,
that keep it attainable.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think mixing it up is really good neurologically because that actually engages your neuroplasticity. Doing
Yes,
a new thing engages that flexibility and your ability to be resilient. You know,
right.
mixing up your practice helps keep you resilient. From a neuroscience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt.
Well, thank you
Hmm.
so much. This has been amazing. Check her out, LA Yoga Magazine, and on Instagram, Felicia Tomasko.
Yes.
Felicia, you're such a gift, and I can't wait to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate it. Nice to see you all.
All right, bye
Hmm.
bye. See you. Have a
Bye-bye.
great night.
Hmm.
Thank you
Thanks.
again.